All right, to sports agent Doug Eldridge. Now, he has represented a number of NFL players. So, Doug, you're hearing this, seeing this. What do you make of it? Jerry Jones seems to be the most prominent of the owners with serious doubts and reservations about renewing Goodell, whose actual term doesn't end for another 18 months. So he's saying, what's the rush? The other owners seem to be telling him, what's your beef, right?
Right. Well, Mr. Jones is certainly a formidable asset by any measure. I think if they were to make the decision today, net, it's a good call to extend Roger Goodell.
Why?
You have to view it like a balance sheet, though, Neil, right? Assets against liabilities. From an asset standpoint, when he came in 2006, the league was doing roughly $6 billion a year in revenue. By 2016, a decade later, it was $14 billion. So over that 10-year window, he more than doubled their revenue. They also had record-breaking media contracts and the impressive conversion from being a sports league to truly being a brand. Now, the proverbial liabilities on this balance sheet, if you will, is what I call the perception tax. And by that, I mean a series of high-profile national issues, individually and cumulatively, which have really taken a toll on the perception of the NFL, from domestic violence to head injuries to more recently the kneeling and the seeming juxtaposition between patriotism or social justice. But even when you overlay those two to create the net that I referenced, I believe the league and all 32 of their owners, including Mr. Jones in Dallas, have unquestionably come ahead over the tenure of his term.
But it's sort of ignoring the elephant in the room now, which is this controversy over the kneeling thing and all of a sudden the declining ratings. It's sort of, what have you done for me lately? And some owners are getting skittish about that, should they?
Well, rightly so. And as Mr. Jones alluded to, 18 months can be a very long time in the current environment, Neil, a very, very long time, because they, unfortunately, now they, being the other owners, have actual metrics to which they can point to say, hey, this perception tax is actually having a demonstrable impact on our bottom line, from dropping sponsors to dropping ticket prices to empty seats in the arena, right, to sagging not just national television ratings, but what's even more concerning is in-market television ratings. For you in New York, that'd be the Giants and the Jets. Down here in D.C., we'd be talking about the Redskins or the Ravens. It's across the board. So there's no shortage of things to point to. But again, I come back to the notion of it having to be a net calculus, because there is no perfect gross assertion or gross outcome.
So is there another backup choice in case things fizzle with him, with Goodell?
I'm not sure, and I think there are. In one of our prior conversations, I said to you, I can't imagine a more difficult job within the broader scope than Mr. Goodell has right now, because he's essentially being asked to ride herd over a litany of social issues, the likes of which are incredibly divisive, right? If you're for it, you're for it. If you're against it, you're against it. And there's no shortage of barbs going across both the aisle. We've heard things like Condoleezza Rice expressing interest and a number of others. But I think due consideration has to be given to Mr. Goodell over not just the first 11 years of his term, but most assuredly the 18 months that follow. Now, to be clear, I'm certainly parting ranks with most agents and players and a lot of fans. But the big criticism of Commissioner Goodell really has nothing to do with his contract. And that is, in most instances, he's the judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to player discipline. Now, as an agent, I would certainly agree that that needs to be rebalanced. But that comes from the CBA. Now, you can say, oh, Doug, they can take it to appellate review, they can take it to arbitration. But, Neil, that kind of feels a lot like the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. Sure, they run up and down the court and they might trade the lead, but we know how that game's going to end. And in the context of NFL discipline, Mr. Goodell always wins. So that's the one lingering issue, but that doesn't have anything to do with his contract. That's the CBA that was collectively bargained.